The Broken Pencil Booking Company Pro Wrestling Podcast and radio show infused with hip-hop would like to humbly extend its deepest condolences and prayers to the family and friends of Jamin Pugh, a.k.a. Jay Briscoe, who was tragically lost on Tuesday, January the 17th, in a very tragic accident. He will be sorely missed by fans and family and his friends as well. This show is dedicated to his life and memory. Thank you, Jay Briscoe, for everything.
Reach for the sky, boy.
Oh, shit. Sunday night, baby. New York City. The big ROH 10-year anniversary. Shit's going down. 10 years, baby. Man, it's crazy when you think about it. It's been 10 years already. Seems like just yesterday I was wrestling Amazing Red. But you know how the old saying goes. Time flies when you whooping ass.
Them boys been whooping ass for 10 years now. We can sit here and tell you how we've been whooping ass for 10 years. Like Samoa Joe ass, CM Punk ass, Bryan Daniel ass, Chris Daniel ass, Homicide ass, another such ass is Brian Kendrick, Evan Bourne, Mitch Franklin, Paul London, AJ Styles. But we don't got time for that right now.
Nah, ain't no time for all that. Ain't no time to sit back and reminisce. We'll do that shit when we old and retired. Ain't no time to be reminiscing, because in case y'all can't tell, the Briscoes is on a warpath right now. And we mowing down anybody that get in the way. And it just so happens that the Young Bucks, y'all boys right in the line of fire. But when I see the Young Bucks, man, I can't help but think, y'all look like two little girls, man. Y'all look like two pretty little girls. And when I see two pretty little girls, being the gentleman that I am, I write them a poem. So here's to y'all, Young Bucks. Roses is red, violets is blue. The Young Bucks got long pretty hair like a girl do. So Sunday in New York, we're gonna have to make them our bitches. And y'all probably gonna go back to California with stitches. Now if y'all can't be in New York to watch us make them girls scream and holler, you can order that sumbitch on pay-per-view. It's only $10. Go Fight Live.tv, baby. Big 10-year anniversary. You don't want to miss this shit. I promise you.
That was beautiful.
No cap, that does sell a pay-per-view.
That was the perfect promo from the late, great Jay Briscoe and his brother Mark Briscoe. God bless Mark, the Delaware chicken. Man. So, I was telling Suave before I brought this on, I was going to drop that promo. Suave hadn't heard that one. And
nah, it was my first time.
It was the reason I said it was the perfect promo is because you it's old school. You hype up the talent that's around you. You big up your opponents, and then you insult your opponents. Then you sell the venue and the event,
and tell them how much it costs.
They hit all the marks. Who, what, when, and how.
So when you hear the idea of talking someone into the building, that's how you do it, because you're giving them all the information to get into the building and be a part of the spectacle.
You and I had the privilege of going to Ring of Honor Final Battle back in, Ring of Honor, Supercard of Honor back April of 2022.
Super card.
Like, keep it a buck, Suave.
Yeah.
What got you in the building?
Oh, we only went for one reason. We went for Briscoes versus FTR.
And how do we get that? Was it because they were on the card, or were we sold on the idea based on some talking?
We were sold on the idea based on talking because one team couldn't get on television.
And the shit that they said on social media was like, you know what? If we ain't there, we're missing something special. And thank goodness I had the wherewithal to go ahead and record just some of the crowd noise, even though we were up in, we can't really call it nosebleeds because the venue was an intimate venue and we had great seats.
We were in the catbird media seat.
And man, the fact that they had not one but two matches in this area, and because of previous commitments, we had to miss the second one, and it was literally in your backyard. Like you could have walked to the venue. Well,
I wouldn't do that.
Except for it was raining, but
yeah, I wasn't gonna do it if it was dry outside.
Yeah,
I'm free.
Yep, but yeah, this is your Broken Pencil Booking Company Pro Wrestling Podcast and Radio Show YouTube exclusive. This is our this is of course everything we do is unconventional, but this is our Jay Briscoe tribute show. I don't like unbelievable is the only word that comes to mind. Like, it's shocking. Someone at the top of their game. This man been wrestling almost 20 years with his brother, and it might be exactly 20 years. Was at the very first Ring of Honor show. He left this earth as a Ring of Honor Tag Team Champion, not to mention a House of Glory Tag Team Champion as well. Just, thoughts and prayers to his family, his girls, and prayers for his one of his girls actually had surgery to help with her back from a gruesome back injury that was sustained in the accident. But and through all that, one of the greatest teams of this generation who would have never got the chance to showcase the talent on a scale that they were worthy of. Like, when you cut your teeth in anything, you scratch and claw. Like with me DJing, like I've done everything from play small venues with virtually no crowd, had venues close early because no one was there, carried equipment in, sometimes didn't spend when I carried equipment in for the headlining DJ to only work to being the headlining DJ, to opening up shows as a DJ for artists, to headlining shows with artists. And I mean, and you could attest to all things from a performance side and also a DJ side, Suave. And
these are truths.
These the Briscoes embodied that, especially coming in from at Ring of Honor. There's early footage of them in Impact or TNA at the time, where they were an unrecognizable tag team. You didn't know how special they were going to be. Their clothes were huge because they were teenagers, and here we are, 20 years later, highly decorated tag team champions in multiple organizations. Never went to WWE. Signed to a company that was purchased by AEW. So essentially, they were AEW property, an AEW entity. Tag team champions for a partner company with AEW in Impact, and couldn't show up on AEW television simply because of something that we highlighted on one of our episodes, which was what we believed to be at the time poor judgment in words, timing, but at the same time, he was in character because he was always in character. And by that promo that you just heard, he's always been a character, because that promo was about 10 years ago. That was a while ago. And all the promos that you will find on the internet are of similar vitriol, similar language, something that you would never catch on public television. I mean, and so they were punished by the ills of their past. Oh, I'm sorry. Jay had the team punished by the ills of his past, simply not from a corporate standpoint, i.e. the organization that hired them, but from the network from which the organization was being shown. this is the bag you want to lose because you decide you want to beat your chest as a network and as a company?
Well, okay. Now I'm gonna play devil's advocate just a little bit, just for the sake of a bigger conversation that we're gonna have that goes with this. There are some mistakes that you can't come back from with certain people. So while I do see, as a wrestling fan, I'm like, this is petty. This is stopping me from getting the content I want. The other side of the coin, and you and I both know this is more my attitude than yours, but I'm very much one and done with matters of bullshit. Like, you cross me in any way, I'm one and done with you. And it's fuck you. If it's fuck you, it's fuck you forever. And apparently, it's like, it sounds really, when you say it out loud, it sounds really, really, really fucked up. But it's true for a lot of people. It's fuck you even in death. Like, you going on to the next life is not even enough for me to take the foot off the gas. So I understand that energy exists. I can't lie and say I've never felt that for anybody. It's very unfortunate that it took place here, because it robbed a lot of people of a lot of content, and there are some people who are not going to get their flowers like they should because of it. And that's the sadder part.
Man. Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, however, it opens a completely new conversation about things that we've discussed on previous episodes about how the business side of professional wrestling is changing. And where some people might bring up Warner Media and their involvement with other projects and why they haven't taken certain actions against certain people, it's because the structure of Hollywood is far different than the structure of professional wrestling. So there's a Screen Actors Guild. Essentially, there is a union for actors and actresses to belong to that protects them from certain actions being taken against them, even when they fuck up. Pro wrestling doesn't have that. Pro wrestling doesn't have a union. Pro wrestling doesn't have an organization designed to protect them. This is part of, Andrew Yang's argument that wrestlers, because of the nature of performance, are actually Screen Actors Guild eligible. They show up weekly, episodic television. Part of what they do is scripted. There's an element of performance that's involved, and then there's also the physical danger part of it. So that, going along with the idea that there's the floating cloud or the floating thought that no compete clauses are going to become or could possibly become obsolete. Now you're dealing with situations where tightrope, no safety net. You're an independent contractor that can be fired and won't be compensated while you look for new work. So now things like that, they come into play as far as professional wrestling, as far as the talent side, is going to have to become more savvy about how they do business, because the business side of professional wrestling is absolutely changing. And at some point, if it becomes that professional wrestling has an active unionized situation to protect themselves from things like this and other employment issues, I think Jay Briscoe's legacy changes. Because essentially he becomes a martyr in a way for career evolution.
For more context for the union conversation and the fact that a good piece, well, actually the entire dichotomy of Jay Briscoe's body of work would never be seen on network television. And of course, none of it ever was while he was living. I mean, with the exception of his time in Impact, and that was cable, not even network for that matter. Tony Khan did the ultimate tribute by having talent flown in, people he worked with, people he was friends with, people that weren't scheduled to be at an AEW Dynamite live show / Rampage taping. And after the Dynamite show had a Jay Briscoe tribute show live in the same arena, and it was not to be aired on any of the Warner Discovery networks that was affiliated with the AEW contract, but instead was aired for free with no paywall, as Tony Khan put it, on Fight TV, which is amazing. Which he also doubled down and said, this will not be the last Jay Briscoe tribute that you will see. You said it was petty?
No, a heady.
Oh, heady. Oh, it's extra classy. In fact, I
classy and heady. And I would look at it as a way to say, like, this is the type of stuff that Kanos is capable of when he puts his mind to it.
And this is, I mean, we know to a fault Tony Khan is the ultimate human. And
yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
But having humanity is a whole other conversation, and this shows the humanity or the humanitarian that Tony Khan is. He actually cares for his people, and I'm sure that will be debated, because there are people that work for him that don't like you, as with any organization, any company.
We've heard and had a few stories told us.
Now, back to the union piece,
right?
The basis of a union, for more than anything else, is collective bargaining. Now, what that means breaks down to a number of facets. It could mean pay. It could mean, and not just necessarily like what one gets paid, but structured pay. Like,
yes. Now we're gonna have a defined floor and ceiling.
Yep, and middle ground for that matter.
Facts. We may end up with tenured pay,
terms and condition of pay, including bonus structure, if applicable. The biggest piece beyond pay is insurance, health and life. What
qualifies and disqualifies you from having health insurance? Do you end up with another situation where you bring back a wellness policy, essentially because now you're an employee, so now you don't have the ability to put money down to skirt part of the testing process. You just have to be clean.
You have a body who acts as a mouthpiece for a larger body. So you have a smaller collective, should I say, that acts as a mouthpiece for a larger body. Retirement benefits.
Right.
How many times have we seen someone having to retire due to injury? Retire because of a family issue? How many times do we see people complain about scheduling, get allegedly held hostage for their contracts because they have to go home or are being told that they can't for X, Y, or Z? These are things that unions negotiate by and large. And as far as the insurance is concerned, the smaller unit, the representation for the union, goes to negotiate things like what the company is going to pay, what percentage the company is going to pay to the larger pharma, larger medical, on behalf of its contracted employees. Considering pro wrestling is let's take it back to the 80s. The reason why Vince McMahon went away from the term pro wrestling, and so it's been told. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. I'm saying now for legal reasons. I'm paraphrasing. The reason why he got away from the term pro wrestling and went to sports entertainment is so that it wouldn't be looked at as athletic competition. Because when you have an athletic competition, in each state you have an athletic commission, which you have to pay, and you have laws and bylaws by each athletic commission. In some cases, you have to pay for, or you have to have a certain amount of medical personnel on staff backstage in the event of a medical emergency when you're running an athletic competition. I'm looking at you, New Jack, rest in peace. Think about the New Jack Vic Grimes situation. If this were considered pro wrestling and you had to go through athletic commission, which XPW was considered pro wrestling. But if that match happened in WWE, they wouldn't have to go by the same rules and guidelines a smaller organization like XPW would have had to go through, simply because they're not classified as pro wrestling, more so than sports entertainment. These are things that the union goes to bat for, and the union will be represented. We'll say AEW has, I'm just going to throw the number out there. We did it before, 200 contracted employees, 200 contracted wrestlers. And the wrestlers are the only people that can be part of the union based on their job title and job description. You may have a representation of maybe 2 to 5 people that encompass the local chapter for a union in that organization.
Imagine the conversations just on deciding who's going to be in charge.
Right. And there's a voting structure. Unions follow Robert's Rules of Order. Going a little bit deeper into depth on this, right? This is excuse me, according to ufcw.org, 7 steps to organizing a union in your workplace. Talk to your coworkers. Talk to a union organizer. Start a committee. Know your rights. Sign union support cards. Vote. Negotiate your contract. And it's talking about the union contract, not your independent contractor or employer contract or employee contract. That's just one aspect of it, right? Now, here we are with major organizations off the top of the head: WWE, AEW, Impact, and when you start talking about, and Ring of Honor, which is also AEW, and then New Japan, which is international. Then you start talking about independent organizations like Progress or HOG, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and then of course you start going even smaller, like Jersey All Pro, Maryland Championship Wrestling from Florida, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood rather. What's the National Wrestling Alliance, which should be in the higher conversation, which in the 80s, 70s, 60s, and before that would have been, but now it's not. It's totally independent. And then, excuse me. Then we go into like in Texas, you have DFW All Pro, DFW Pro, and VIP Pro, Texoma Pro, World Class. There's so many smaller organizations. A union could essentially disintegrate the smaller organizations from even existing. Internet wrestling, as you know it, will be into dust if the industry became unionized. Chapters will be started between organizations, because you couldn't have one governing body for a union for people that are under the guise of a Tony Khan or a Vince McMahon / Nick Khan. There are too many steps to this, all in the name of being defended, right? Now,
right.
How does all of the things that I just named tie back into a posthumous Jay Briscoe?
Just from what we discussed before, there's in a situation where the pro wrestling talent side is unionized, you can stage a walkout, a sit-in, whatever form of protest they so choose, similar to anything in pro sports. If one person is being misrepresented or mishandled by, whether it be a promoter, whether it be a sponsor, a television entity, whatever the case may be, if the union finds fault with, you know, the collective bargaining agreement, or feels like it's being violated in any way, pardon the phrase, but they can take a knee and won't nothing move.
That's dangerous for a TV product, but go ahead.
Bruh, especially a TV product that deals in live television. So the way people, backlashed and had all these things to say about Naomi and Sasha Banks, that could have been an issue that sparked a complete, labor stoppage. So for those people who are looking at Jay Briscoe's situation and feel as though he has apologized and he has atoned for his offensive comments, or for what anyone might have deemed offensive, and after, completing whatever the set list of terms that had to be met. So let's say it's a public apology, it's completion of a sensitivity training, and so many hours of community service, or whatever the case may be, but something related to the group of people that have been offended. Once those things have been completed, essentially he should be able to return back to work without any further consequence. Now, the court of public opinion is something completely different.
Boy.
But as far as being able to work and earn a check, it should be back to business as usual. Well, if there's any situation as to where that's not allowed, then in a unionized situation, you can stop everything. Now it's just, you can be mad about it, but there's not much you can do about it.
I'm looking at the last NBA lockout season. You're talking about an entity that has live broadcast television that had a full-blown work stoppage. So you have two types of work stoppages. You have strikes, which is when the employees or the unioned employees can't come to an agreement, or can't ratify an agreement based on the terms that they have, and the owners of the NBA franchises in this case would be they of course they want work to continue, but the players are like, nah. Or you have a lockout where the players want to play, but the owners are like, nah, because you can't meet our demands. So that's what the latter is what happened in the 2011-2012 NBA season, which normally starts around the middle of October, middle to the end of October, and runs through April. The 2011-2012 season started on Christmas Day. And
Which I mean, quiet as kept, that's the way it should be, but that's a different conversation. That's a completely different convo.
Now, monetarily, it didn't impact the NBA as much as it could have, simply because of an 82-game season, 66 games were still played.
Right.
Regular season, that is, and the playoffs were unaffected. However, it was still a 149-day standoff of we want versus you get.
That takes place in the media, where everybody can see, where everybody's business is exposed.
And they're supposed, politically speaking, when it comes to a work environment, it's supposed to be non-retaliatory.
You would think, but we know better.
Yeah, retaliation looks different when it's handed down to the person that's receiving it. Because you can't prove retaliation. Retaliation is an idea. You can't prove retaliation without someone telling you it's retaliation. I can't hire Suave and then go to a Suave Burgundy performance and say, I don't like what he's rapping about. And then I return back to the office and I see Suave and I start asking Suave to do demeaning tasks outside the scope of what his job originally was. And then I say that you're not performing the duties of your job that you're supposed to be here for satisfactorily, and I'm going to let you go. If it's documented that these things happen, there is no actual proof that the catalyst for all of this was me watching your performance. That shit happens daily.
I'll stop you when you start lying.
Retaliation only looks like this. On paper, it only looks like this. Oh, Suave, I don't like the way you rap. Tell you what, I'm going to start cutting your hours until you change your verses. How many times has anybody ever said anything remotely close to that in a metaphor? I'm going to venture to say very few, and the ones who do don't give a shit that they're saying it. They have no care about blowback. And the people they're saying it to have no union to represent them, and I'll double down even further and say this is happening in at-will states where you can be hired and fired at will. Thank you for coming. Your services are no longer needed.
That's unfortunate for you.
This is also what can happen when you unionize. And the only thing that you have to help you is the fact that the union can help supplement your income until they can come to a finding or a resolution of your expiration or termination of employment.
I'll stop you when you start lying. We're not there yet.
The fact that all of this is coming from a man tragically passing away and never being seen in the light that he should have been seen in, simply because of something that happened over 10 years ago that he's apologized and atoned for, is ridiculous. On the flip side, someone who lends to think to himself as a Samaritan, but again, he's walking around with an idea that hasn't been put to paper or executed on in physicality, is Freddie Prinze Jr., actor, screenwriter, former creative personnel for WWE, has come public many times of saying that he wants to start his own pro wrestling company, sports entertainment company, what have you, with things such as health insurance and benefits, and also possibly a union. But we've yet to see these things. More often than not, we've seen talk of pro wrestling unions that never materialize.
Hogan stomped that shit out in the 80s once.
Talk about it.
Like, Jesse Ventura had the idea, I want to say it, if I'm remembering the story correctly, like before WrestleMania 1, where Jesse Ventura, because of the money that they were making in the 80s and they were getting to it, wanted to stage a coup of starting a wrestlers union right before WrestleMania 1, because that is where you'd have the most leverage to twist Vince McMahon's arm, because you're essentially going to threaten a walkout before WrestleMania 1 and his nuts are literally on the line. Pause. So you would have to acquiesce to these demands just to get your pay-per-view done.
Did you mention you mentioned Jesse Ventura, right?
Did.
Let me give you a quote from a book that he wrote called I Ain't Got Time to Bleed. Quote, all through your wrestling career, remember, you're an independent contractor. You're paying out enormous amounts in taxes. There's no pension, no health benefits. And the moment you're not making that draw, the promoters couldn't care less about you. You're a piece of meat. I knew guys that had worked hard for 20 years or more and retired with nothing. Wrestling operated under some of the most unfair working conditions in the country. I don't know how they got away with it for so many years. Mind you, this is an Army Ranger who turned into a professional wrestler. Continue.
And essentially what Hogan ended up doing was he went back and told. Like, all bullshit aside, he just went back and ratted it out. So I mean, Hogan took the money. Hogan took his money versus the money of everybody, which, I mean, you label it what you want to. I know what I call it in my house, but
boy,
like that's one of the times in history where like you really had an opportunity. Now imagine the crew of the 80s, because WrestleMania 1 is what, 1985?
85, yes.
So imagine the type of money professional wrestlers would have been making in 85, 6, 7, 8, and going forward. One of the bigger boom periods in professional wrestling, period. That's in the South, the North. It's what Vince is doing. It's what Jim Crockett's doing. It's pre-WCW, but it's a whole lot of money being made.
Even Vern Gagne and to an extent Jerry Jarrett.
A union might have saved the territories. A wrestlers union, if because what three entities participated in Super Clash? So it was
AWA.
Okay.
It was World Class. And I believe it was Jim Crockett. No, Super Clash. That was Continental.
Right. So imagine if those three decided to merge. It's like, we're losing our ass out here. We'll merge. And then you have a union. I mean, makes it a little different now, doesn't it?
So now, do you have multiple union, like as in entities, like different union brands, or do you actually have different chapters of the same union? If you do it in professional wrestling,
you probably have more experience with unions to tell me which one's better.
Okay, if you have different chapters, you all have the same laws and bylaws. You just operate under different labor agreements based on the region. Or in this case, we'd be based on territory. However, if you have different brands, then the laws and bylaws are completely different. An AEW, two AEW wrestlers that are unionized could not participate in different unions. Like you and I, if we're a tag team, right, in AEW, I couldn't be part of AEW's union and you couldn't be part of WWE's union. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't mesh well. In fact, it's a conflict of interest and probably a violation of your labor agreement and or your union contract.
Talk to them about it, man. Let these people know.
And there's so much more that I want to say, and for obvious to you, I can't.
Yes, for Baggington Securitas, and just the fact that, hey, we don't violate the money,
but for a nominal fee,
soon to be. That's exactly what we own, buddy. I just want you to know.
Yeah, man. But all that to say this, I still don't know that with a union that Jay is able to reap the benefits of an apology tour, which he probably would have had to do because he tried the one-off out of character. And then I don't blame him for not continuing forward in pushing the I'm sorry narrative, because if you do it once and you apologize for it, it's already done. Especially in the era of social media and the internet, it lives on forever.
You just hit forward.
Yeah. There are many people in many different... Matter of fact, here we are. I don't know if you saw the news earlier today. A SAG-AFTRA actor, Alec Baldwin, charged with involuntary manslaughter for something that happened while filming a movie.
You think they finna scrap that movie and start over from scratch?
Here's what's crazy. Outside of his attorney, guess what else he gets?
What the deal?
Union representation.
Because it's in the paperwork.
And it happened on the clock. It happened on the clock. So now legally. I'm not going to go into details on that aspect because I don't know. I wasn't there. But that fact remains that, at least according to media outlets, this shooting happened, which should have been a prop gun, actually had a real bullet and killed somebody on set.
Bruh.
If there is no on the clock part of that I need to know about, please inform me, because there's nothing about that says that happened casually.
Look, you don't just really casually shoot somebody, but
at work, while working.
You see what I'm saying? Like there are different levels of things that are protected by this, and if
but you're worried about something that was said on Twitter back in 2010, 2011.
But here's the bigger. Here's another part of that conversation that's probably going to end up making them kick themselves in the ass. You realize if you just allow a 1 hour presentation on your network, this is not even a conversation. Like the further and future ramifications that would spin down from all of this, it's a moot point. Because it's an hour of television that, let's be perfectly honest, isn't going to have necessarily the highest viewership in the world, but it makes you as a company in the moment, makes you look compassionate, because okay, there
number
are extras,
one, yes, boy,
and nothing works better in the court of public opinion than compassion when you have the upper hand. Now, when you fighting from underneath, compassion don't mean shit. But when you're the air quotes big bad corporation, showing compassion is the way to get people off your ass quickly. Now, there are other things besides the statements that needed the apology that was over 10 years ago. And you'll probably know more about this than I do, because I wasn't watching as intently during that time. But there's this whole, we've discussed it on previous shows, but not in depth.
I almost did a whole show on what you're about to talk about.
Right, the the involvement of the Confederate flag. You can't use the Freebirds pass, even though they were doing the shit in like 91, 92. Please inform the listener who does not know, because I don't want to be the one to do that and I haven't experienced it firsthand.
Which part?
Just the part about just the whole Briscoe's Confederate flag merge.
All right.
That whole thing.
So for point of reference, go back to episode 158 of the Broken Pencil Booking Company Pro Wrestling Podcast, infused with hip hop. Episode is called Broken Record. It's all available on anywhere podcasts are streamed. You can Google it by that name, BPBC, Broken Pencil BC, episode 158. All right, so that's just as your reference point. The Confederate flag, it was flown by, or the rebel flag was flown, or a version of that was flown during the Civil War by the original colony, the original 13 colonies, also known as the Confederate States of America, when they seceded from the Union. The Briscoes hail from Delaware, which is the first state. By default, you're going to be a representative of the Confederacy. Whether you want to be or not, Delaware is synonymous with Confederacy. And during this time where Jay Briscoe was the ROH World Champion, he was entangled with in an angle with Jay Lethal over the world title. And similar to how Stone Cold got a smoking skull and had his own custom belt, Jay Briscoe went out of his way to show his pride, because he's a proud Southern boy. People don't consider Delaware the South. It is as old of the South as you can possibly get. You are not New York. You are not New Jersey. And even though Delaware neighbors New Jersey and Pennsylvania, you are south of those states. So that makes you a Southern boy. You can hear it in his twang. The fact that he and his brother were both chicken farmers shows you that and Delaware is small. It is an extremely small state. He was proud of his heritage. Now, does that translate onto the reasons why he has his belt? More than likely. But what it means to me as a black man in this country is the fact that you are priding yourself on the fact that you represent an entity that lost. Number two, you represent an entity that represents everything that's wrong about this country. Theft, rape, pillaging, murder, enslavement, entrapment, all of the criminal things that people get chastised for and that we as black men still get stereotyped for, even though we are productive members of society. And the most times that you look at us are making more money gross annually than the people that are accusing us of these things through eye gazes. In a wrestling environment, people don't tend to think about that. But if you look at it from a non-myopic lens and go bigger than the situation, i.e. real life, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the most damaging part of the past of this country that is the most painful for people of color. If anything, if there should have been any ground to chastise Jay Briscoe for his legacy, or any part of Jay Briscoe's legacy, should I say, it should be for that. And we questioned that in episode 158. We also went out of our way to reach out to Jay Briscoe multiple times to get him on this show, to no avail. Now, could a better job have been done? Hindsight's always 2020, so there's no telling what could have been done. But we were respectful in our approach and even reached out to people that we knew him to try to make this happen. But if you know anything about professional wrestling and the Briscoes in professional wrestling, those guys were busy. Multiple time tag team holders in multiple organizations simultaneously, busy. Pro wrestling was, as Jay Briscoe put it, in his bloodline. It's his life's blood. He farms chickens. He has a landscape business on the side as a hustle, or had landscape business on the side as a hustle, and that was doing a feud with Matt Hardy while in the Ring of Honor. So, was that part storyline, or was that partial truth? Any part of that, what I just said, on the negative, we don't know. But what I can tell you is this: as a fan, looking at some of the tributes last night, one that stood out to me on AEW Dynamite was Jay Lethal having a Briscoe band around his arm. Let me tell you something. I don't care where you come from in the United States. I don't care who you are. If you don't have a disgusted bone in your body when it comes to the Confederate flag, you are either very forgiving, you are not knowledged, dare I say ignorant, or you don't like your own people. On the flip side, if you go out of your way to show tribute to someone that you shared the ring with multiple times, someone that you entrusted your life with multiple times across the world, not across the country, across a couple cities, across the world, and you shout this man out in that way, there is a genuine love and affection for that person. And I can't have love for somebody who hates me secretly. There can't be secret hatred in a relationship like that. So for that reason, I'm going to side with that part of Jay Briscoe didn't exist as Jamin Pugh. Maybe as Jay Briscoe the wrestler, but not as Jamin Pugh the human being.
And I'm going to again play devil's advocate and say, as a network responsible for content that goes out and is distributed to millions and millions of homes across the world, whether it's a work or a shoot, it doesn't matter. Because whether it's a work or a shoot, and you don't go to great lengths to explain that, then the content will hurt and offend the same way it would if it was absolutely intended to be hurtful and offensive. You ever remember, let's go back to the days of Saturday morning cartoons. Once those cartoons went off and then you get the episode of Saved by the Bell.
Okay.
And then
it usually means wrestlers right behind it, but go ahead.
Right. Yeah. It's Saved by the Bell at 10, at 11, it's time for wrestling. So you get the episode of Saved by the Bell, and then it's going to be the one where Jesse, has this thing about pills. And they give you a caution before you end up watching the show. They let you know in advance that there's going to be some uncomfortable material displayed on this show. Or go back even further for those of you who watch Different World, the episode where Freddie had the sexual assault situation. Where Dwayne jumped through the sunroof trying to defend her.
Man, there's you can even for wrestling fans that have a bit more context. 1996, when Vince McMahon deemed the Attitude Era prior to an episode of Monday Night Raw.
Factual. That is a good one. That actually is a good one. I was going to stick on the TV side. This past season of P-Valley, where there was the domestic assault episode, they went ahead and made sure that you knew with messaging that there was uncomfortable content within this episode. Unless you were going to go out of your way to let people know this is completely scripted and playing the part of a Confederate racist is person A and playing the part of the oppressed is person B, you're not going to get a difference in the way people feel about it when they see it. Because professional wrestling has never been about telling you that this is fake, or that this is staged, or this is scripted, or this is something we wrote. The idea to get you to buy in and to emotionally invest is to say that all of this is happening for real. The suspension of disbelief. So, to a wrestling fan, yeah, it might matter. To a global content distributor who has, essentially the court of public opinion to answer to, they don't care about that. So again, yes, they will pick and choose about who they sit down, let's call it what it is. They have their choices about who they're gonna drop their nuts on.
Boy.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's never going to be equal. You don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. There's no such thing as fair. It's just what it is. So while everything you said would make sense, and it's something that probably should be known, when you show the footage and there's no explanation, there's no pre-explanation attached to that footage, they just show you the footage, you're going to react based on what you see. Because it's going to be shown to you with no context. It's the way media kind of works around here. So if you were to see that with no context, no explanation, and you're not a wrestling fan, what would you think?
I would be enraged to numerous levels,
Exactly.
And to go back just a little bit on this, you're absolutely right. If Jay got away with the whole thing and part of his character, shame on anything related to Sinclair Broadcasting for paying for that fucking belt and for allowing it to be paraded the way that they did, because now they're complicit in a crime.
So okay, exactly. You see, shame on Sinclair Broadcasting. They're held liable and all these different things. That's exactly how people would handle Warner. The exact same way. just for a different offense.
And the problem though with that is the offense that you're talking about again was apologized and atoned for, and we've seen way more happen for way less. We're also currently watching the shit show of a senator who has lied literally about his entire life on television for the world.
Right. For those of you who've ever seen the movie The Distinguished Gentleman, somebody actually pulled that shit off in real life. And it's funny because, like, you have to laugh at it because what else are you gonna do?
Because, like, truth be told, for you movie buffs, The Distinguished Gentleman was actually the political version of Billy Ray Valentine, ironically played by the exact same person.
But here it's crazy because, like, you're saying with the Warner situation, the offense was apologized and atoned for. The other issue that we just talked about, nobody ever apologized for that.
Nope, not at all.
There was no censorship about that. They didn't video distort the belt. It went on for a while.
If it was video distorted, I would never have known about the whole belt at all because I would have just been watching it.
Facts. You would have had to actually be in attendance to see it.
Exactly.
And that's a different situation.
And you do that to me. I mean, I remember, like, you know, I was, for my belief, if I could pull it up and tell you based on the day, because it was for one of my birthdays, probably my 10th birthday. And what happened that night when I got home was the night I found out Bruiser Brody had got stabbed and killed in Puerto Rico that same night. And I was at a wrestling show, and I saw you remember the triple cages. You know, the tower was like a triple stage cage.
The WCW stat cages.
Not that one, because that one was all the same height. The world class one, where it was like the 20x20 on the bottom, and it kind of went smaller for the middle tier, and then the top tier was like an 8x8, and that's where the match always ended.
I'd have to see that.
It's almost like you're stacking like building blocks, but it's like a bigger one, and then a middle, like a medium sized one, and a smaller one on top.
I mean, it still sounds like what I visualized from the WCW triple cage.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, well, WCW may have had this,
the Ready to Rumble cage, basically.
Basically, right. Now, I saw a match between Buddy Roberts versus Michael Hayes, and at the time I'm in Oklahoma. And mind you, I've met Michael Hayes, Buddy Roberts, and Terry Gordy all at the same time once. I was about 8 years old. I was, man, who didn't watch the Dukes of Hazzard? So, like, all these things, like that shit, you look familiar to you, and and it was only when you get to a certain age that you're made aware of these things, or you're able to form your own opinion of these things. I wasn't there yet. But I tell you, this is probably about the time where it started, because I remember a guy pulling out a rebel flag from his back pocket, a Confederate flag from his back pocket, and waving it up there. And I was standing next to him because we were talking about the matches the whole night. And he pulls out his rebel flag and throws it up for Michael Hayes, who's on the top of the cage about to beat the brakes off of Buddy Roberts. And he points down at us, and because I'm right next to him. And that's when I step back. I'm like, why am I standing next to this clown with this bullshit? You never want to be associated with something like that as a person of color, no matter what it is, who it is, what it represents. You don't want to be associated with anything like that. And that's when I started becoming a little bit more aware of the things that that affected me and my family, and have to make sure that you can forgive and never forget, never ever forget. That said, go ahead.
No lies told. And then again, it just brings me back to that. What happened in Ring of Honor? That wasn't nobody apologized, nobody atoned, nobody told. So in the scope of what professional wrestling always has been up until its more modern incarnation now, you didn't reveal. The magician never showed you where the rabbit came from.
Exactly. Never showed his tricks.
But that's what that is. And essentially because of Ring of Honor's seclusion from pop culture, that didn't become as catastrophic as it could have been. Like, we're talking about it now and it's in retrospect, it's way back then, and there's only a couple of people that we can ask for clarity. And while we may get it privately, like we could get that question answered privately pretty quickly, but as far as publicly, that's not in anybody's, it's nobody's responsibility, but it's everybody's responsibility.
Absolutely.
So again, so now you would look at a corporation like Warner. Not only are you going to take on the heat from that situation that you had absolutely nothing to do with, but then bringing them onto your television opens you up for scrutiny for the things that happened 10 years ago that were atoned for. So it's like
the cycle continues, man, and
yeah, pay it forward.
All we're saying is break the damn cycle. Stop the bullshit. Like, you and I can both agree, body of work wise, as a talent, there's absolutely no reason that Jay Briscoe should never have been should have been banned from cable television. And even if it was in that moment, like we've seen people who have been convicted or well, I'm sorry, not convicted, but tried and accused of murder return to television. This man did nothing. The only bleeding he did was that of chickens and of people in the wrestling ring. No one died. Feelings got hurt. And to quote anybody with half a heart in the big sack, man, fuck your feelings. Get right or get left. This is not the way Jay Briscoe should make it to the mainstream. This is not the way anybody should make it to the mainstream. And the fact that we're having to have this conversation and he's not able to hear it, and the fact that we actually care enough to want to talk to him about his career, and we went to go witness one of the greatest matches of his career. Hell, one of the greatest matches of 2022 for damn sure. Easily the greatest match of the weekend a huge weekend of professional wrestling that was in our area. And we're talking hundreds of matches, and this was number one. This is not how he should be made a household name, is all I'm saying.
Just goes to show you, you don't get to choose your legacy.
Sometimes it's chosen for you, and it may not be your own fault. Show at brokenpencilbc.com, brokenpencilbc@gmail.com. Chime in, tap in with us. Facebook group is live. Even hit the comments up. We mean no harm. We come in love. To the Pew family, to professional wrestling as a whole, to anybody that knew and loved Jamin Pugh, aka Jay Briscoe, peace and love and blessings and prayers of strength to you and yours. Suave, take him to the house.
Pencil pushers. Heads up, pencils down.